What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a special episode of the Volleyball Source podcast. My name is Everett DeLorme, and today I am joined by none other than Caitlin, assistant head coach of Davidson University, Caitlin Genovy. Caitlin has spent a number of years now coaching in the NCAA, and she's going to help me break down the NCAA tournament tonight that kicks off this weekend. So first and foremost, Caitlin, welcome back to the show. We did this last year. Happy to have you back.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett.
First and foremost, let's chat a little bit about your time at Davidson. Last year, you were coaching at Houston. Had a decent little run in the tournament this year. You went over to Davidson, but you've moved up in the world from volunteer assistant coach now to full-time assistant coach. So how has that transition been for you?
It's been good. So life as a volunteer is tough, and anybody who's been in that knows the juggle. So, now being paid for a full-time job, you have one job and one job only, which is kind of nice. So there's a little bit more free time in there. But with the role that I'm in with Davidson now as an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator. So if I'm not coaching volleyball, I'm trying to find the next kids to come to Davidson College. So busy in many different ways, but it's been really cool. Learned a ton this year, more on like the backside of running a program, and all the pieces, and then learning how to navigate the role as a recruiting coordinator and growing in that aspect, which has been a ton of fun.
Sounds like you got a lot on your plate. What's first and foremost, how did the season go overall for you guys? I see you're not.
Season was
Go ahead.
It was okay. It wasn't as good as we had hoped for, or anticipated, really. We ended our season in the conference tournament a round earlier than anticipated. Took a couple of extra losses that we did not kind of foresee in the season. Nothing too bad. We had some growing pains. Davidson had an incredible year last year where they finished second in the conference, making it to the semifinals. And so some growing pains there. Working at a high academic school, you have kids who really care about what they're doing in the classroom. And that's really a huge part of why they come to Davidson. And so helping the kids kind of learn how to juggle both. How do you be high performance in the classroom and high performance on the court, and what that means in terms of workload on the athlete side of things. So some growing pains with that, but I think we started end of season meetings this week, and there's a lot of really good perspective on the team, and looking forward to the spring. There's a lot of kids who now have a better understanding of what we need to do to really truly compete for an Atlantic 10 conference title.
How competitive is the Atlantic 10? In retrospect, like
super.
Where would it rank amongst like the top conferences in the country?
No, I mean, it is a true mid-major conference, so we're definitely kind of in the middle of the pack. We're not competing with the Power 5 conferences like the Big Ten, the Pac, well, what is currently the Pac-12 for a few more weeks.
Yeah, what was formerly known as the Pac-12.
Yeah, exactly. Those conferences, right? But we're very competitive amongst other mid-major conferences. The Mid-American Conference being one that probably most people in Ontario are familiar with most of the schools kind of being in the like New York, Ohio, Michigan area, University of Buffalo, those kinds of schools. But pretty sweet. We are well represented in the NCAA tournament this year with Dayton, who has been ranked for a good part of the season in the AVCA coaches poll. Phenomenal program. And then runners up in our conference, Loyola Chicago, who came in last year as a first year to the conference and really made some noise in the NCAA tournament. So it's super competitive, the middle of the pack. Anybody can win on any given day. It's just trying to find ways to compete with the top two teams in the conference. That makes it tough, but makes it a lot of fun.
All right. What was the biggest thing that you had to learn this year? What was the biggest
for our kids, it was learning. So the conference got a lot better as a whole. All of the teams, even the bottom, got way more competitive this year. And so a lot of it was learning how to earn your wins. Last year, I think Davidson was talented enough that they could just kind of show up with their B game or C game and still beat opponents pretty well. And this year, really, truly, because of their success last year, you go into the season with a target on your back and getting everybody's, best game that they can give to you, and learning how to compete with that and being able to do it every single match is tough. And that's a huge learning curve for for student athletes, especially when they have heavy course loads throughout the week as well too. So
Got to remember, it's student athlete, people. It's
it
student
really is
athlete.
here, really is student athlete here.
You gotta focus on those academics first, and then and then everything comes after. Well, Caitlin, unfortunately, you guys aren't in the tournament this year, but still, I've been saying for a long time that I think the NCAA tournament is one of the best products that we have in volleyball. It's the most exciting. It's some of the best covered. I just absolutely love it. As I explained to you as I was saying a little bit earlier, I have watched very little, if any, NCAA women's volleyball. I know it's a sacrilege. I know it kind of contradicts what I just said, but it's tough up here in Canada. I think you remember, like it's tough, and
I remember trying to find the illegal streams online and watching it in my parents' basement and learning how to use a VPN in high school so I could watch games out of the US.
yeah, it's not fun, of course. Like, sure, Volleyball World has the Big Ten as part of the package, but you get to watch like Rutgers and Iowa, and on the odd time it's like Penn State. So basically what I'd like to happen, and so this is ideally for the viewers who maybe know very little about NCAA or want some insight, because you're in there, you know these teams. I'm sure you know a little some of the rumors are the happenings. So first and foremost, what was your initial take of the draw of do you think that the number one seeds deserve the number one seeds? Do you think that there was any teams who were omitted from the tournament that should be there?
Yeah, so overall, I think this year the level of competition in the first and second rounds is going to be really interesting compared to previous seasons.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of first round matchups that there could be some pretty good upsets that a ranked team can be knocked off by an unranked team, especially with this year the top 16 teams being ranked across the board. So there's a little bit more rankings than what we're used to seeing. So you'll see if you're looking at the bracket, you'll see kind of each quadrant of the bracket has a 1 through 8 seed. So I guess that would be 32 teams got ranked and not 16 because math is math. But there's some really interesting matchups in the first round, and I'm really looking forward to just a higher level of competition across the board within the first and second rounds this season compared to last year. I do think the top 4 seeds, or the 4 1 seeds, are pretty spot on. I mean, you've got Nebraska and Wisconsin, who have obviously shown their capabilities to be, some of the best volleyball teams in the country. Then you get Stanford in there, who had a phenomenal year their last season out in the Pac-12, and they're always a super strong program. They didn't lose many kids from last season. So with firsthand experience of what they look like across the net, that's a pretty good volleyball team over there. And then Pitt's the one that kind of surprised a few people, because Pitt or Louisville could have flip-flopped for that last 1 seed there. Super competitive teams that have had, great battles back and forth in the ACC. And it'll be interesting this year because they end up in the same quadrant. So there is a potential that they meet up in the Elite Eight this year and kind of have to duke that one out again. So that'll be really interesting. In terms of teams that didn't make it in, we were actually talking about this in the office today. I think one of the most surprising teams this year that didn't make the tournament was Kansas State. They had a great season. They knocked off BYU twice. I believe it was 2 sweeps. BYU is obviously an incredible volleyball program, has spent the entire season ranked in the ABCA top 25. And then K-State went and knocked off Texas, also another ranked program. So a little bit there, a little bit of surprise from several coaches. One of the mid-major conferences, the Sun Belt Conference, got 4 teams in this year. I think that shocked a lot of people, just with the number of teams that they got in. It's super exciting to see more mid-majors get in. And that's a fantastic conference to try and do it. Those teams duke it out, on a weekly basis with each other. And then I believe NC State's the other program that was a big shock for everyone. They were ranked pretty high in what's called RPI, which takes into account winning percentage and opponents' winning percentage. And they're a team that got left out. I know that there's some kickback on social media from the players, and I haven't seen anything from the coaching staff, but a lot of NC State supporters that are shocked by their omission from the tournament this year. So that one's super interesting there, especially with the SEC getting 8 teams in this year, which is a little bit different. I don't think the SEC's had that many teams in a long time. So that's been super interesting just to see how that unfolds.
How do you think, like, because I know like the Big Ten didn't really have like only 5 teams from the Big Ten got brought in. What makes that happen? Why is there like certain, like, is it just deemed that the SEC as a conference is really strong this year? Like, how does that work?
So this year they took into consideration RPI and another metric called KPI. And KPI takes into account a little bit more the environment in which you play in. So looking at road wins versus home wins, and kind of each match gets assigned a value that either makes it a really good win or just an okay win, or it's a really bad loss versus an okay loss. And it's a little bit more subjective there. And this year, the SEC members had more games that gave them more points within those RPI and KPI values, which would push them to get more teams in the conference. So this year, looking at teams like Michigan State, Illinois, not having seasons as strong as they have had previously in the Big Ten. So a lot of that comes into preseason, what they do in preseason. I know Illinois lost some bad ones early on, which hurts RPI. Because basically you want to schedule so that the teams that you're playing in non-conference play go on and have really great seasons and strengthen your ratings. And so a lot of those Big Ten teams just didn't quite schedule that way, or just didn't get the results that they typically have within their programs. And so it fluctuates every year. You'll see sometimes the Big 12 will have more. What was the Pac-12 used to be dominant, even more so than the Big Ten. And so you just kind of get these in waves. ACC bringing in more teams each year. So it changes, and it kind of goes with just how teams do in preseason and then within their weaker opponent conference schedules.
In your opinion, what was the strongest conference this year?
That's a tough one. I didn't watch a lot of SEC ball this year, just with time. But I think I actually don't really know. I still think the Big Ten's probably one of the most competitive, even if the middle of the pack isn't as strong as it used to be. I think just the top has gotten even stronger, which makes it more difficult for them to win. So I still think that's probably one of the best volleyball conferences. The restructured Big 12 is going to be interesting to watch and see how that kind of grows, especially once Texas moves out. Texas and Oklahoma going into the SEC for next season will help strengthen that conference even more. With the teams that they have in. So I think that's going to become a beast of a conference.
Yeah, because in addition, you've got Florida in there, you've got Kentucky, you've got FSU. Like that's already a really strong conference.
Yeah, Mizzou had a phenomenal year after being in the bottom last year. Don Sullivan taking over that program, getting them back into the tournament in year one is really encouraging for that program. To see, and then A&M getting in there as well. Texas A&M getting in that last spot, that eight spot for the SEC. So it'll be interesting to see how that conference continues to grow with the Longhorns moving over there.
If you're an international, by the way, watching this, and you're not sure what we're talking about in conferences, in the NCAA, there's conferences. It has nothing to do with geography. It's literally kind of at this point, it's just scattered all over the place. And because for these big schools, their conferences, like the sports play in all the conferences. So obviously, like football and basketball are like the main drivers. But now volleyball, like we're going to talk about it for sure. But volleyball is like definitely the third biggest. Like women's volleyball is definitely the third biggest sport in the NCAA. Massive growth.
Absolutely.
It's been a phenomenal to watch from the outside, just like how everyone's picking up on it. But we're seeing, so we've mentioned it a few times, basically the Pac-12, which is a conference where you've got teams like the UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, like Arizona State, like big names within the NCAA, basically is blowing apart. And it sounds like, there's a few of the Big 12 teams moving over to the SEC, so things are going to change. How do you think the dissolution of the Pac-12 is going to affect the rest of the volleyball landscape? Because you already got some big schools that are joining like the Big Ten. You're seeing that ripple effect of, like Texas and Oklahoma moving over to the SEC. Like the rich are just getting richer, it seems like to me.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing I think of with all the realignments that are going on is that the strong conferences are just getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So you see like the ACCs adding Stanford and Cal and SMU into that mix, and SMU having a phenomenal year in a mid-major conference. They're now becoming a Power Five program. So with the loss of the Pac-12, I think the biggest thing that's going to happen that gets impacted in this whole thing is like the true student athlete experience. When you're traveling coast to coast for your matches, Rutgers is going to be having to fly out and compete on the West Coast with UCLA and USC moving into the Big Ten. You kind of lose that athlete part of it or the student part of it a little bit. But those schools also have, much more financial resources, support resources than the little guys do that can help those student athletes continue to be successful in their academic endeavors. So it's a little bit different, but when you're Stanford, I don't think you think too much about having to fly out to North Carolina to play a bunch of schools out here and worry about your classes. I think you're probably doing a-okay there.
Yeah, you're probably fine. Let's jump into the bracket a little bit here. We're going to start with the first quadrant with Nebraska's quadrant. Obviously, Nebraska. They did lose that Big Ten final, the last one of the year, but they've been dominant all season. Of course, they've been in the headlines with one of the biggest matches ever, you can say, for volleyball out on the football field. First and foremost, let's just jump into it. Can Nebraska do it again? Can they go all the way? Does this team have the mettle to do it all?
In my bracket, I've got them going to the finals. I am a little biased with my national championship pick, but I do think Nebraska is an absolute force to be reckoned with. And if they don't get it done this year, one of the most exciting things about that program is that they are almost entirely freshmen on their starting lineup. So first-year student athletes for the school, just building a ridiculous, great starting base point for that program to continue to grow and build. And I know that they've had some injury issues this year as well, with key pieces being in and out kind of throughout the season. So I'm excited to see. There's been reports that Lindsay Krause, who's been out, she's one of their key outside attackers there. She's been back in practice and returning to the court for Nebraska there. So that could be a really key piece for them to make a push for another national championship.
That's crazy. Most of their starting lineup is all freshmen. That's
nuts. Yeah. I think like their setter, their right side, their middle, and outside are all freshmen.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, there's the that quote there from the Nebraska volleyball or football coach this year about how when he was like struggling, he would basically be going to the Nebraska coach and be like the women's volleyball coach being like, and like he's saying like he's the big dog. Like, man,
yeah,
you're having the season that they have because they only lost that one game, right? They only lost the one match to Wisconsin. Yeah. So you lose one, it's your final match of the year to another number one seed in Wisconsin that we'll get to in just a little bit. Like, that really has to be one of the best programs in the world. Like, you have to put it up there along with the Caniglianos and the Vakifbanks and those top European teams as just straight production and performance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why you see so many Nebraska Cornhuskers on Team USA and other. I think they're mostly American. I know Wisconsin's got some more international kids, but
let's go.
There's a reason why they end up at the highest levels of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Kentucky is the second-ranked team in their conference. Obviously, like the Kentucky is a team that's been there recently. Like, they've won a national championship in recent years, correct?
Yeah, they have. I can remember that was a few years back. I think I was still at Was it 2021?
I thought it was. Yeah, let's see here. Let's do a little bit of research.
Let's do a little Google here. When did they win? It might have been 2020.
Ooh. Oh, would it have been that like
2020?
Interesting. Would it have been
they
like
beat Texas?
That wouldn't have been the spring of 2020. Was there
Let's see here.
I'm pulling up.
Of course, it doesn't have any dates on here.
I'm on the Wikipedia. This is the.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
Remember, 2020. What was the date on it? They beat. They beat Texas.
2020 would, let me think here, because I started at Indiana State in 2019.
The 2020 NCAA Women's Division I volleyball tournament began on April 14th, 2021.
Okay, yep.
So is that one that it played? It was the one.
Oh, yeah.
It was the one.
Yes.
Where you and someone who were going to keep their identity safe were streaming on Twitch.
Oh, yeah.
You guys were watching.
And we kept getting kicked off.
Yeah, you guys, and we're going to keep that person who's an absolute legend, by the way. You know who you are, and you know exactly who I'm talking about. That guy is like one of the people who just like keeps volleyball going. We're streaming it on Twitch, and you guys had your own commentary. I absolutely
live commentary.
I loved that. That was so insightful. Just like in-depth stats, breaking it all down. That was awesome. That was a good time. Okay,
hey, we might bring that back this year.
Ooh, let me know. Let me know when that happens. That was my girlfriend's one of her first interactions with volleyball too, because there hadn't really been much volleyball over that time.
And Canada was pretty shut down.
Canada was real shut down. So that's Is there anyone else in this conference other than Nebraska and Kentucky? Like how is Arkansas looking? Obviously Florida, they're hosting at home.
Yeah, there's a couple interesting ones here. Arkansas has had a really great push kind of late in the conference season. They have a 5'7" outside who's probably my most favorite athlete to watch, Jill Gillen. So if you're an undersized outside listening to this, it's a great person to go and watch there. Hosting at home, they've got a pretty good bracket there. Florida State is healthy again. They were pretty banged up at the beginning of the season, took a couple of bad losses early on and have been just slowly building their way back this season. So I think that'll be a really interesting matchup there. And then James Madison is an interesting one there against Baylor that I think could really go either way. Baylor obviously playing in a great conference in the Big 12, but James Madison having established themselves as one of the mid-major powerhouses and working their way back into the bracket as an at-large bid, meaning that they were selected for by the committee, the tournament committee. So that's an interesting one.
So they were an at-large bid and they got ranked?
Yes.
Crazy.
Yep. So they had a great preseason. They knocked off some pretty good teams and then teams that have gone on to do really well. And then also they come from the conference, the mid-major conference that's got 4 teams in. So the Sun Belt Conference getting 4 teams through to the bracket is pretty amazing. Florida's an interesting one. They lost their starting setter early on in the season. Alexis Stuckey going down and has been out, will be out, will not make a return this year. Also losing a couple other key pieces of their starting lineup there. But they've been surviving in conference season. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there against a very good Florida Gulf Coast team that won their conference to get into the tournament. So a couple of interesting matchups in that one.
They also have, if they get through that first round, they also have Georgia Tech potentially in the next round. How is that as a matchup? Is that a bit of a toss-up?
I think that one is a bit of a toss-up. Obviously, the ACC not as strong as the SEC in terms of level of competition year-round, but Georgia Tech has had a great year. They split with Pitt this year. They've had a couple other good wins within the ACC. I haven't watched them too much, so I'm not super familiar, but that's a pretty feisty team. So they've made some noise in previous years in the tournament, so I would expect nothing less of them this season as well.
All right, fair enough. Where's the biggest potential upset here?
Let's see here. I'm thinking the biggest potential upset in this could be TCU Florida State is an interesting one. TCU's kind of had a roller coaster every year. So an unranked team knocking off a ranked team. And then that James Madison Baylor matchup is super interesting to me as well. I'm not sure if it would be called an upset, but by definition, if Baylor were to win that match, they are taking down a ranked team. So could define it as an upset. But
all right, Kentucky, Nebraska. Would that be a safe pick? Was that your pick? You don't need to tell us everything, but that would be. I
think that's who I have through in this quadrant of the bracket.
All right, cool, love that. Obviously, big shout out to Benjo at Kentucky. Now to the other side of the bracket. Now, Caitlin, we've got the other team that we've talked about quite a bit, Wisconsin. And then on the other side, one of the best teams this year out of the soon-to-be dead Pac-12, Oregon, in the number 2 slot. Wisconsin did win that final match this season against Nebraska.
Rather dominantly as well.
Rather emphatically. You're not wrong. Obviously, like they've done it more recently than Kentucky. Like this is a team that has won a national championship in the past, like, what was it, 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago. 2021 was the last time they won a national championship. So this is a team that has done it before. You still have athletes from that team on this team, most notably tournament and finals MVP there, Anna Schreck from 2021. Of course, we're both big fans of her. Got to support the Canadians. Can Wisconsin, are we potentially seeing another like Nebraska-Wisconsin final? Like, is that what
I think it's going to be a Big Ten matchup in the finals again this year. I mean, if it's not, there's going to be an upset along the way to get to it. But I mean, right now from the volleyball I've watched this season, those are the best 2 teams and the 2 teams that I hope to see in the finals.
All right. Fair enough. We don't really need to go into how good Wisconsin is because everyone knows. Looking through this side of the bracket, though, it looks quite tough. You've got a couple of Big Ten teams. You have Pac-12 teams. Even teams like Hawaii are typically quite good. What's your pick overall, and what do you think is going to be some of the best matchups on this side of the bracket?
Yeah, so I've got Oregon and Wisconsin getting through on this bracket here, but not with any ease. I do think that the Iowa State-Hawaii matchup is going to be interesting. Hawaii winning the Big West this year in a dominant fashion as well, taking down Long Beach State in the finals there. Iowa State having a good year, not a great year like they did last season. Eastern Illinois has been cruising this season out of the Ohio Valley Conference. They're a mid-major program who had some success early on in the non-conference schedule, beating teams like Illinois to start their year off. And I think that matchup with Marquette could be really interesting. Their potential upset with EIU making it through on that one. But the rest of them, I think the Northern Iowa and the Miami match could be interesting too. Northern Iowa absolutely dominating their conference season this year, going undefeated in the Missouri Valley against a good Miami team. So I think that'll be a really great challenge to see what you and I can do in that. And having spent some time in the Valley, I would love to see the Panthers make it through in that match.
Miami, is that another SEC team?
Miami is an ACC team, so they compete in the same conference as Pitt and Louisville. So they've had some good wins. They've also had some bad losses. So they're one of those teams that's, I think, kind of riding the roller coaster right now a little bit. So looking for them to hopefully steady out in time for the tournament.
We saw Purdue kind of pick up some late wins there at the end of the season.
A little bit of steam.
They're the third ranked team. They have a potential third round matchup with Oregon. Is there potential for an all Big Ten matchup here with them in Wisconsin?
I think there's potential there. I do think Oregon runs a little bit of a cleaner game right now, with Purdue being a very young team this year with lots of freshmen making impact. A lot of seniors on the Oregon program hoping to end their Pac-12 time with a bang before they go and join the rest of the world in the Big Ten. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes down. But no, I think that I have Oregon going through, but Purdue has also picked up steam at the right time, that it's definitely possible that they could see their conference foes there.
All right. But we're still picking Wisconsin and Oregon in Oregon here overall. We're still going 1-2.
Yep. Ducks and Badgers, baby.
Ducks and Badgers. Okay. I mean, hey, if anything, that's like a good. I'm liking the colors we have in the in the finals here. I do.
It has some variety. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, and everyone knows how good Oregon looks all the time, right? Like those.
I was laughing. I have friends that coach at Southeastern Louisiana, and I texted them. I said, "That's a lot of green going on in your corner of the world there." So they got Oregon, Southeastern is green and gold as well, and then Hawaii in green and white. So poking fun a little bit there.
The rainbow wahine. Honestly, I've like Hawaii is, for some reason, they're so easy to watch online because all of their matches are just posted on YouTube. Like there's that one fan that just
There's
posts.
one mega fan.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in the volleyball world and you want to follow Hawaii, like you've been able to watch their matches for years. But you ever played down there? You ever been to?
I've never been out there. We had talked about it when I was at Houston as a preseason tournament stop, but we had wanted to go first weekend so that we could go early and hang out and explore. But it just the scheduling part never worked out.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, we're moving now down to I guess the third quadrant of the bracket with Pitt at 1, Louisville at 2. Who's it? Dayton. Dayton is the top team in your conference down there. They've got the 5th seed. They were 31-2 this year, undefeated in conference play. Looking pretty damn good. Bit more of a mix over on this side in terms of team. Much less. I don't think there's any Big Ten representation in this one at all. But what's
just Minnesota in this one, yeah.
Yeah. What's our overall thoughts over here? You mentioned.
So.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say this part of the bracket to me has the most upset potential here with a couple of really strong mid-major programs in this mix. I mean, you've got Western Michigan, who had a phenomenal year, went undefeated in a very competitive Mid-American Conference, taking on Auburn, who we saw last year in the tournament. Super feisty, really young team. They've had a little bit of an up and down season this year as well. So I think there's some Western Michigan's coming with some pretty good steam and a very competitive mid-major. So that could be an interesting matchup there for me. Utah State and Minnesota, another one that's really intriguing as well. Utah State did not win their conference tournament, received an at-large bid from the committee, but was hanging out in the top 25 for RPI most of the season. So really good mid-major program there, getting a ranked seed in this part of the bracket up against Minnesota, with Keegan Cook in his first year with the Golden Gophers there. Another team that's had a little bit of an up and down season as well. I think Utah State beating a Big Ten team is technically still an upset, even though they are the ranked team, but I would love to see them get through there. And then the other one that could be interesting is Pepperdine and Dayton. Dayton having obviously a phenomenal year, very good team. Definitely deserving of their top 25 ranking. It's fun to watch them, maybe not so much play against them, but Pepperdine being kind of a feisty tournament team has surprised teams before. So I'm interested to see what happens in that matchup there as well.
It does seem like Minnesota's taken a bit of a dip since when you lose a coach like Hugh McCutcheon, you're gonna take a dip. What conference is Pep in?
The West Coast Conference. So typically it's San Diego getting out of that conference with the automatic, but San Diego taking a down year after having several incredibly strong seasons in the past at least 4 years.
Now that you mention it, like San Diego seems to be a team that is always in the mix. Yeah. And they're always kind of like a dark horse to make a run, and I don't see them anywhere this year.
Yeah, they did not make it out this year. They did not get an at-large bid. Pepperdine going overall number 1 in that. And then let's see here. LMU, Loyola Marymount, the other team in that conference, making some noise this year. Did not get an at-large nod from the committee. I think there's probably some pushback on that there as well, just based off the rankings. But just one team coming from the West Coast Conference this year.
That's crazy because there was a time when, West Coast was synonymous with volleyball. Right, like schools like Pepperdine were known for their volleyball programs, and it's just there's so much growth for women's volleyball in the States that it's now truly like a coast to coast sport, as you see. As the Big Ten should technically be like the last conference to be big into women's volleyball. It's like it's in the north, it's cold up here, but hey, you know what? They love it. Once the Big Ten really jumps on to beach volleyball too, that's going to be when things get really serious. Who's your overall picks to make it out here of this conference?
I do have Pittsburgh making it out. Pitt and I've a Pitt and Louisville matchup in that round. So just to make it really challenging. Sorry, my dog is eating something. 1 second. could hear wrappers crinkling, and I was like, wait a second, what is that?
Yeah,
She found an old wrapper.
Oh, of course. Gotta stop her before it
But yeah,
starts.
yeah, please don't eat the chocolate granola bar that was in my backpack. Uh, but Pitt and Louisville here, this was a little bit of an interesting setup by the committee to have those two teams that were in the Final Four on opposite sides of the bracket previously. I think that was last year or the year before. I can't remember. But those two teams having different opponents in the semifinals and now getting set up here to maybe making it through to their regional finals in the same side of the bracket.
Yeah, that would be interesting. So we're still going for like a 1-2 final here. That's what we're thinking.
Yep, I do think. I don't think there's anyone in here that can really push them to Creighton. Maybe if they're healthy, Creighton could maybe make a bit of a push in there, but you've got to get through Louisville to do that, and I think that's a pretty darn tough matchup.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah, it does seem like, from what my limited understanding of NCAA volleyball, that it's Louisville, Pitt, and then kind of everyone else in on this side.
Yeah.
If I was a betting man, this might be the interesting side, but fortunately, I am not. All right, moving forward to the last quadrant. Stanford at 1, Texas at 2. That first weekend in Texas with Texas A&M, Texas State, Texas, and SMU, which is another Texas team, I think that's going to be fire. Like that.
That's a bloodbath first and second round there. That is brutal for teams going there. That's going to be a very highly competitive bracket there. Texas A&M showing a little bit of strength towards the end of the season. Texas being strong all year and not as strong as they have been in recent years. And then SMU having a phenomenal season in the American Conference, winning that conference and having a great preseason to go with it. And then Texas State getting a well-deserved at-large bid, some justice for Texas State after getting shafted the last couple of years. So excited for my friends that coach at that program. They got to take on a really tough Mustangs volleyball team there.
That one is just like in terms of like regional rivalries, that's the best one, hands down. Has to be like.
Oh yeah, you could throw any other Texas team in that mix, and there's going to be bad blood for each other. Especially, I think the A&M Texas matchup is probably one of the biggest rivalries there, and that's coming a lot from football and basketball. But keep it rolling.
Well, I love that because we've discussed it before about how NCAA volleyball is. There's so much more than just the volleyball fans, right? Because there's truly the school's fans, and they show up, just like the band shows up, and you have all of the fanfare. So that's why you can hardly fill any stadiums for international stuff, and yet you can sell out 91,000 at Nebraska. It's just different. So yeah, that Texas A&M matchup has historically always been real feisty. Of course, we've already seen some support for BYU in the chat as we start this. Of course, you got the Vols, the Tennessee down at 3. Your former team, the Houston Cougars, coming in with the 8th seed, and then of course Stanford at 1. What? Also Georgia. I kind of like Georgia. Of course, former Canadian national team head coach Tom Black is over there. They're taking on Arizona State in the first round. What do we think of this last side of the bracket? Are we still going like you've picked 1-2 all throughout? Are we still going 1-2 on this one?
As much as I would love Houston to get through Stanford in their second round matchup, I think that's a big beast to battle. At least there's some familiarity there. Hopefully some bad blood that can fuel the Cougs volleyball program to get through Stanford after losing to them last year in the Sweet 16 match. Yeah. So fingers crossed there for them. It'll be a tough one, but I did pick Stanford in that matchup. I'm sorry, Houston. Love you guys, but I'm going with the numbers on this one. But I do have 1 and 2 getting through here. I think Tennessee could make a really good competitive push, but to get through Texas is going to be a difficult feat, even if it's an off year for the Longhorns. Yeah,
getting through Texas. I mean, they are the defending champs.
Getting through Texas at Texas too, because they'll be hosting that in that portion of the bracket because they're the highest seed in there. So you got to go to Gregory Gymnasium, which is probably one of the most electric gyms. I had a lot of fun coaching in it. I couldn't really hear anything in it, but had a lot of fun coaching in it. So I imagine playing volleyball in that atmosphere is an absolute blast.
It's one of those bucket list things that, as a volleyball fan, and as I've been watching, next year, I've been saying this for years, I'd want to just do a tour of different NCAA schools, and 100%, like Texas has to be on that list. Just that like wall of fans that you have on the one back end.
Yeah, and they're just like on top of you too. The gym is it's a small gym. It doesn't seat many, but it's like 3,000. It's steep, and everyone's like on top of you and very engaged in the volleyball game.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. I mean, I wish we had more of that in North America, but
I think the last time in Canada, the closest thing that I had to that was when I was at McMaster playing, and the men played Ohio State for the first time, and they sold out the Burridge Gym with 3,500 fans, standing room only.
Oh, I remember that. I was commentating those
very
games.
Similar to that atmosphere.
I was commentating those games, and I was up in the skybox where they do the streaming from, and it was so hot in that damn Burridge Gym.
Yeah.
I mean, Burridge is like, you played there.
It's hot on a regular day. Never
hot.
Mind when you stuff it full of 3,000 people.
Oh man! And then the worst is that everything around, like once you get out, it's so chilly. Like it's just like every time you go for nationals. Oh man, it's such dichotomy. But I mean, like I know what it's like to be in like a full packed Burridge, but that's nothing compared to what Texas would be like, right? Like that is, and nothing else. Like,
you got to add a band in that gym, and some more obnoxious fans on the sideline, and then you get pretty close to it.
Yeah, it's the one time I've seen a band in Canadian volleyball is the 2012 national championships at Queens. And it was the Friday night match between Queens and Alberta. And Queens beat Alberta, I think, in 4, but they had the band there. It was a packed full house. It was wonderful. But not enough of Canadian volleyball nostalgia. Let's jump back into, because Genovy, you and I could do that for days. Like
we could do it for a long time.
You made a Jory Mantha reference before we started. You know that's my boy. He's been killing it in Germany, and of course he's a former Marauder with you. But looking at this quadrant. Obviously, Texas, the defending champs. Stanford has done it in recent years as well. Like, it's interesting when you look at all of the, other than Nebraska or Oregon. Has Oregon been to a Final Four recently? But like Stanford's been
not
there.
Since I've been coaching. I remember watching them maybe when I was in high school, like back when Penn State was making their big run. I remember watching Oregon to some degree, but I don't think they've been there in recent years.
No, I don't think so either. But other than that, like Pitt has been there, Louisville's been there, Texas has won, Stanford has won, Kentucky's won, Nebraska's won, Wisconsin's run. Like all of the top 2 seeds in each conference have been there and been on the scene and have been threatening to win. I think it's honestly such a toss-up. Did we make our picks? Sorry, I can't remember. Did we make our picks for this last quadrant?
I did say 1 and 2 through.
Okay, so basically you're just jumping on the bandwagon of everyone else, and
yeah, that's it. Guilty.
I do feel like that has kind of been the case. Like there has been very few like upsets once you get down to like the Elite 8 and the Final 4. Like mostly like the Final 4, right? Like it's always been pretty tough.
Yeah, and I think looking on the other half of the bracket there, that Pitt-Louisville matchup could go either way, as it has all season. But the 1 and 2s, those teams have really established themselves as dominant programs, not only in their conference, but also within their non-conference scheduling. I think those are going to be some really tough teams to get through, but some of those 3 and 4 seeds could make a pretty good push, a couple good punches there, and see what happens. It's tournament time. So we know every year with basketball, with March Madness, we see craziness all the time. So this season has been a number of upsets throughout the non-conference and conference season. So why not keep doing it through the tournament?
Last time Oregon was relevant was 2012. And they got second.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's not bad at all.
I think I remember watching that game.
2012.
Yeah,
you would have been 18
in high school.
You would have been 17 U. I forgot.
17s, yeah.
Yeah, you're 17. It's playing for MAC. Now, like we alluded to a little bit earlier, this has been a massive year for the NCAA. Like women's volleyball seems to be really blowing up. You're seeing numbers that are rivaling the football numbers. Like for a while, it's been like, especially like it's been kind of been going around, like especially in the Big Ten. Like if we just picked the Big Ten sample, it's clearly been like football, basketball, like men's football, men's basketball, and then women's volleyball, and then everything else falls in right afterwards. But this year we've seen some of those numbers with football, like women's volleyball really rivaling football. Have you kind of been feeling that, because you're right there, you're on the inside of it? Have you been feeling that growth of it as in the inside? Can you feel that excitement?
Oh yeah, we get more and more kids interested, like even just in the small community around our campus. There's more and more young women who are interested in playing volleyball. I mean, we sold out our summer camps this year, and had like a waiting list of 60 kids on it, which is just going to show how much the sport is growing, how much attention it is getting. And I think this season alone has really put volleyball on the map with the number. I know this doesn't mean much for anybody listening to this in Canada, but down here there are more nationally televised games on the major ESPN networks, not just their streaming platform ESPN Plus, but more and more games being shown on major television networks. Minnesota had a match this year that pulled 1.66 million viewers. It was the highest watched volleyball match on a national broadcast. And this year, ABC is going to be showing the NCAA finals on their network. So just the reach that this has gotten is huge. Before, it used to be trying to search for games on ESPNU and ESPN2 and hoping that either you found somewhere that had that channel that you could watch it, or you had a cable package that you could watch it. And now ABC, which is accessible across the country, is going to be showing our sports national championship, and just the opportunities that presents for young women in sport to see such an awesome game, such a beautiful game for women and young girls to get into, just on their regular old TV channel is really exciting. And I think it's just going to keep going from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really comes at a good time too, with the pro volleyball league starting up in the new year, and then you've got another league coming in the year afterwards. There's so much momentum right now for women's volleyball, and you absolutely love to see it. I wish they had kept that the NCAA finals on the Saturday night, because ABC is fantastic.
I do wish that as well, yeah.
But you're moving to a time where you're competing with NFL football, in like the heart of like where we're getting down to like the nitty gritty this season. Like if you put it on a Saturday night, NBA sucks, and like NHL sucks. Like it's early in the season, you're not competing with it. Yeah. Put it on the Saturday night, make it a prime time event, right? Because that's where the bulk of the people will want to watch it. Or like put it like a Saturday afternoon or something, right? Saturdays are, I guess, college football. That's you don't want to mess with that. Yeah. But Saturday night seems like a perfect time. Sunday afternoon seems almost like a wasted opportunity, being it on ABC.
Yeah, and I think so in terms of like draw for live viewers, so every year the coaches convention is hosted in conjunction with the NCAA Final Four.
Yeah.
And this season or this year they've had to try and remanage that schedule a little bit, shift things around to try and keep enough coaches around to want to watch that game on Sunday. Which is tough because it's the holiday season. People are going to want to go home, spend time with families and that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what the actual draw is. I think it'll be interesting to see what the numbers end up being. I mean, this year, some of the games that were on at the same time as other sporting events, the volleyball matches were drawing more viewers than football.
Let's go.
Which is really exciting. So hopefully that's the case this year, and we can knock off some college football for that primetime spot on Saturday in the future. But I think in terms of the athlete experience, I think adding that extra day of rest definitely helps in terms of performance instead of having to go back to back. So that I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in terms of the level of the game, just with greater recovery.
Love it. I mentioned pro volleyball coming in 2024 to the United States. Of course, there's one league starting up in the new year, another league starting up next season. Both seem to have some exceptional backing and some fantastic like non-volleyball like big names coming in. Is this something that the athletes and like the NCAA as a whole is aware of? And if so, like how excited are they about it? Because like I said, like this is the best product we have, I think, in volleyball. And it's such a shame that the NCAA produces like there's 300 plus Division I women's volleyball teams, and that's just Division I. That doesn't include Division II, Division III, NAIA. Doesn't include everything we have up here in Canada. Like there's so much talent in North America, and everything has to go overseas. Like you yourself, you know how tough it is to go overseas. How many more athletes we would be keeping if we had a product here. So what's the buzz of like that you know it's coming within the NCAA?
Yeah, I think there's any athlete who has some remote interest in playing professional or wanting to even know if it's a possibility. The ability to stay at home is becoming more and more enticing and encouraging, and the fact that options are going to exist to do that is going to be huge. I think there's a lot of excitement around it. I also think with 2 leagues starting up and a 3rd league already going, there's some hesitations to see how those leagues work around each other, how they maintain the level of volleyball. If there's, I'm assuming that there's some kind of exclusivity with the athletes' contracts. Yeah, and figuring out how that's going to manage and how that's going to sustain, because we've seen in the past leagues tried to get started and then crash and burn pretty quickly. And I mean, we've seen on the beach side of things, AVP crash and then relaunch itself into the beast that it's become now. Hopefully,
even then, trust me, they've had some issues. Recently too, with Bally's and stuff like that. But
I can only imagine. But being able to build it, sustain it, and keep it competitive without diluting the talent with, I think PBF is starting with 8 teams. They're adding, or 6 teams. They're adding more, and then Love Volleyball has not announced how many teams they'll start out with. They just have athlete commitments at this time. And I mean, the athletes that are committed to both leagues are phenomenal. So it's really interesting. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens and just how many opportunities that gives kids graduating, and then how that could work with kind of that off-season schedule with NCAA and amateur eligibility. And how they can maybe work around that with college kids who might be looking to play in the league.
My assumption would be it would be like anything else. Like you would have to almost declare that you're going to go play pro. Like my assumption is that you wouldn't be able to do both, right? Like
it'll be interesting.
I don't see that I don't see any possibility where you would be able to play for one of the professional teams, like even AU. Which when you said 3, I had to like scratch my head and be like 3, but I guess AU is currently the only pro league. I didn't mean to put quotations around pro because there's no doubt that they're professionals. They get paid to play volleyball. Like that to me is like the bottom line, right? Like that's a contract. That's amazing. I just don't think AU is like a real thing. And I think it's going to be one of those things that's going to dissipate really quickly once these other leagues come up. But I love the competition. Sorry, go ahead.
It's entirely different than kind of your standard volleyball format. So it'll be interesting to see how they sustain as well, because they've shown that, it is possible to start a league and keep it going. And I don't know what they have in terms of viewership or anything like that. But I mean, the league's still going. There's still 4 teams getting paid to play professional volleyball with some incredible athletes. Morgan Hentz having just played in that league, and she's kind of like the next up and coming libero for Team USA. She's been on the Nations League roster. So it'll be interesting to see how all 3 of them kind of work and who survives and who crumbles and what ends up happening with that.
I think this is the best case scenario, to be perfectly honest, because there's so many. You've got like 3 times the opportunities now. Like you have the 3 times the amount of women who are going to be finding contracts. But also you're having 3 times the amount of like people who are learning how to make it work. Right? And if you look back in the history of any North American professional sports, minus the MLS, there's always been competing leagues, competing competitions, and there's always been a merger. One of them like leaves and closes, and you bring in some of the teams, and there's a surplus of athletes. I think this is the best case scenario, right? And like so many people I really hope are jumping into it and seeing those opportunities. I know Shaina Joseph is the only Canadian that I know is going to be playing in PVB. She's going to be playing in the Orlando team, I believe.
Yep, she'll be there.
But other than that, anyone else you know of? Any tea you got for us?
None that I can think of off the top of my head. I do know that there have been a number of other international women commit to some different teams. I just don't have their names off the top. I haven't seen anything from Bree.
Which Bree is playing like she's
playing in Brazil,
yeah,
right?
she's the top setter in Brazil.
Yeah.
And she was playing for
So I don't know if she's moving anywhere anytime
she's playing
soon.
for Bernardino. So yeah, I don't think she's going to be. I'm looking at the Orlando roster right now, and I don't really recognize anyone on Volleybox. Yeah, so it's. I honestly like the branding for some of this stuff. Like it looks really good. Oh, sorry. You know what? We're gonna throw this on the screen for people here to see, because I've been like looking on it off on the side, and like look at that. Like the Orlando Valkyries logo looks legit. Like that.
Yeah, all the logos. They've done an incredible job. They just launched Las Vegas this week as well too, so they are officially the Las Vegas Thrill. And then San Diego Mojo was the other most recent one. But they went all out on these logos, which I think is awesome, and they're all unique and quirky.
Yeah.
You don't see anything like this from anyone else, which is awesome.
No, not at all. You've got let's see, what do we have here? We've got the Omaha Supernovas. So Omaha is Nebraska, right? We just talked about how big volleyball is in Nebraska, and that is massive. The Atlanta Vibe. Cool, love that. Everyone knows where Atlanta is. Gotta respect it. The Grand Rise Rapids. Grand Rise is like Michigan. Upstate. Grand Rise.
Grand Rapids is Michigan. It's like right across the border from Sarnia.
Okay, sweet. So hey, if you're a Canadian person, maybe that's a good team to follow. Columbus Fury, down there in Ohio. Oh, the Fury's logo is legit.
Yeah.
Like the Medusa looking woman, or I guess she would be a Fury, but that's actually a sick logo. I like that a lot. And then finally the Orlando, the Orlando Valkyries. So looks like there's 7 teams. Well, we'll
I think the Vegas team is starting up in 25.
So there's also the San Diego Mojo.
Yes, the Mojo.
It looks like, because like this the second round, there's only like 2 games. So like the rounds that they have. Yeah, and the Vegas Thrill. The Vegas Thrill will be in here as well.
Okay. I couldn't remember if they were next year. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'm excited to see how that goes this year.
Yeah. All right. Did we? Let's just jump back to the tournament real quick.
Yeah.
Who's your final 4?
My final 4, I have got Nebraska, Wisconsin, Louisville, and
so Louisville.
I think
Nebraska.
I picked Oregon. I think I got Oregon going through Texas.
You can't have Oregon. Oregon is with Wisconsin. It'd be Texas or Stanford.
Oh, hold on.
Top 2s.
My final 4. Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, Nebraska, Wisconsin. Yeah, Pitt and Stanford. Louisville and Stanford.
Louisville and Stanford. All right, so you're going to 1-1-1 and a 2 in Louisville. Nebraska, Wisconsin final. Is that what we're going with here?
That's what I've got going.
Yeah. Who's winning in the final? Nebraska or Wisconsin?
I got Bucky Badger going.
Bucky Badger going for
Yep.
It's kind of nice, because I always find it. I've said before, it's always hard to beat a team twice in a season. You know, like it's always hard to have, that back to back. Not the back to back, but like see a team again, because there's always the response. But now both these teams are at 1-1, so it can go down no matter what. I know I talked to TJ Sanders, and he was breaking down, like he was at that first Nebraska versus Wisconsin game, and just talked about the differences between the 2 teams. But it's very interesting that Wisconsin kind of slapped them this past weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarah Franklin posted some insane numbers. Our girl Anna Schmreck had 18 kills in a 3-set match, which is bananas.
That's gross. That's 6 kills a set.
As a right side, middle right side as well. So, I mean, Sarah Franklin's just playing on a different level this year after having a bit of a health scare. So,
how many years does
I'm excited to see.
How many more years does a Schmreck have? Like, can
she's either a senior or a grad.
Because, like, hey, can we release her? Can she play VNL this summer for Canada? Like, can we throw her into the roster?
Oh God!
Like, imagine.
I mean, they do it with Asia O'Neal just did that from Texas with Team USA.
Yeah, she was actually.
She's still on the Texas roster. So Anna's only a junior.
Damn
it. So it would have to be is Wisconsin willing to work around. I mean, they did it with Dana Rettke too. Rettke played for Team USA while she was still on the Wisconsin roster. So
did she? But did she play like VNL or did she play B team stuff?
I think she was in the VNL roster.
I mean,
well, she was still there. So I
have heard stories of like American
I don't think Shannon
coaches.
Hasn't.
Oh no, I definitely like because I was talking to assistant coach Matt Kruger because I was there for NORCECA champs and he was just like, and I was like, when's Schmreck? And he's like, as soon as we're allowed to have her from Wisconsin, we're all over that. But although I do remember back in the day, I almost wonder if that's something like coming from a decision from her and her parents not to like burn herself out too much. Because I do remember watching her the first time I saw her play. She was 14U in the 18U provincial final playing for Defensa.
Yep.
And I'm sure you were there. I'm sure you remember. And I was chatting.
A little string bean.
Yeah, I was chatting with Dale Melnick, and because one of her daughter played on the 14s with Anna and Anna's parents, and I was just kind of like what I'm seeing from your daughter already at 14 is like that's crazy. Like even then you could tell that she was going to be outstanding. But I was just kind of like, what's next? Is she doing camps? Is she doing high performance? They're like, no, like we want her to take some time off. Like we want her to kind of like have a minute away from volleyball. So there's always seemed to be like a lot of balance for her. That was always
it helps when dad, performed and played at one of the highest levels possible.
Really?
In his career.
What did her dad do?
I believe he was I'm pretty sure he was in the NBA.
Oh dang. Okay. Well then. Well, that's something I didn't know. Oh yeah, no, he played in the NBA. You're right. And he won two NBA championships with the Lakers. Okay.
Dang.
So yeah, he's been there. He's done that. So that's phenomenal. Like as much as I'd love to see her help that team make that push for the Olympics, at the end of the day, being
it'll be interesting.
Is important too. Are you going to the NCAA? Sorry, are you going to the AVCA coaches convention?
Yes, I will be down there, going down for education piece, watch the semifinals, and then come home before we actually make the drive up to Canada for Christmas.
Oh, nice! You're going for a white Christmas, eh?
Well, we'll see if there's enough snow up there. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I've been seeing, there's no snow. Like it snowed a little bit in Toronto, but I've been seeing these videos of like Buffalo getting pounded. Nothing's
Waterloo got a good amount of snow too. Recently, my sister was not too happy about that. So.
Of course she wouldn't be. All right, Genovy, as always, super nice to chat with you. Super nice to see you again. Glad you're doing well. Thank you so much for, catching us up here with the NCAA Women's Final Four. If you guys want to catch that, of course, here if you're in the States, it's a lot easier. That gets kicked off tomorrow on Wednesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday, right?
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Tomorrow's Thursday. Today is Wednesday. It will be kicked off on Wednesday, November 30th. There's like a million places to watch it, right? Like it's all over the place.
I think there's a good mix. I think a lot of ESPN Plus if you have that set up, and then can't remember if there's any ESPN2 matches, but there's all the information will be on the NCAA website. They'll lead you to all of the broadcasts and the appropriate streaming links.
And of course, if you're always looking for something a little schmalegal, you can join us over on the Volleyball Source Discord. I'm sure the lovely members of our community will help you out. And if not, it's always a great place to come in and chat and just be a part of everything. Genovy, are you a part of the Discord yet?
I don't think I've gotten signed up yet, or maybe I was at one point, but I'll make sure I get in there for this year since I have some free time on my hands.
Yeah, unfortunate. Next year you won't. Next year you'll have.
Hopefully.
Next year you'll be dancing away, and that'll be great. But in the meantime, we'd love to have you in there and get your insight and all your knowledge, and just kind of teach us about some NCAA volleyball. I know that the NCAA section of the Discord is very active, and we have some very active.
Oh, cool.
Very active fans, both on the men's and the women's side. But yeah, we'll always be happy to have you. And of course, if you're doing any more of those fun little Twitch streams that you've done,
commentaries.
Yeah, exactly. we've actually been doing that recently with Champions League matches, because sometimes the Champions League matches are all over the place. So we have our Turkish friends who stream the Turkish matches for us, and it's been fantastic.
That's awesome.
Genovy, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. And guys, go watch the NCAA Women's Tournament. As I said, best product in volleyball we got. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett.
Peace.